With incidents of anti-Semitism reaching record highs, this morning we hear from survivors of the Holocaust, including Dr. Ruth Westheimer. They reflect on the past, plead that history not be allowed to repeat itself, and cry out for a future of tolerance.
Now, from 42nd and 2nd, this is Pix 11 News Close-Up with Marvin Scott.
Good morning. Hate crimes against Jewish people have been increasing by alarming numbers, a 90% hike here in New York City alone. The question arises, why? Why now, and why nearly 8 decades after millions of Jews were slaughtered in the Holocaust? Is history repeating itself? In the face of those rising numbers of anti-Semitic incidents, I met with a group of Holocaust survivors this past week at the exhibit of Auschwitz at the Museum of Jewish Heritage. 5 Jewish people with a common bond, survivors of the Holocaust whose families were among the millions lost during humanity's darkest hour. They gathered at the Museum of Jewish Heritage to view a living memorial to the Holocaust. The images rekindled thoughts of loved ones lost, Dr. Ruth Westheimer's mother and father among them.
Every time I see a picture on Auschwitz, I look if I can see my father, my grandmother, my mother, the other grandparents, and I've never found them.
Ruth Mermelstein and her sister lost 6 siblings and their parents at Auschwitz concentration camp. She still cannot shake the memory of a verbal encounter with another woman.
She showed me a pile of ashes, and she said, "This is where your parents are, your whole family."
With the dramatic rise in anti-Semitism, she is fearful lessons from the past haven't been learned.
It's very frightening to me, because this is how it started. I say, please God, He should look down and see to it, that this shouldn't happen again.
I couldn't recognize my mother. I couldn't find her in the crowd because I've never seen her without hair.
Tova Friedman survived Auschwitz because her mother hid her among corpses.
I don't think people realize what hatred and prejudice can do and how far it can go. It's like a cancer.
The 2 survivors compare the prison numbers tattooed on their arms, and Tova recalls the kindness of a prison guard.
She said, "I'm going to give you a very small number." So I was 5.5. So if you survive, you can wear a long shirt, sleeved, and you won't be ashamed of anything.
Not to be ashamed, by no means. I'll be joined by Tova and Ruth a little later in this broadcast. The graphic reminders of the inhumanity of the Holocaust are there for all to see in the largest exhibit of its kind, Auschwitz, not long ago, not far away, at the living memorial to the Holocaust at the Museum of Jewish Heritage in Lower Manhattan. Dr. Ruth Westheimer is a trustee of the museum, and she is a Holocaust survivor, a Holocaust orphan who became America's most famous sex therapist. So glad that you can join us on this program. And in that interview the other day, you said it was difficult to look at those images, looking for your mother and your father, who you lost at you were the age of 10. What about the images today that you see of swastikas scrawled across synagogues and those images of hate that exist today?
Marvin, first of all, bravo that you're doing a program like that. Very important. When I used to say that I don't do anything political because I talk so much about that other subject matter. I changed my mind. These days, I talk about how upset I am when I see families being separated, because that's the story of my life, being separated from my whole family. And there are some issues today that we have to be very aware of. And when I see swastikas at Teachers College, Columbia University, where I teach, I just couldn't believe it. It kind of makes you think that time has stood still. So programs like this, like yours right now, very important. Not only that, Marvin, people have to come to the Museum of Jewish Heritage, 36 Buttery Place, twice. The first time they come, they're going to be very upset. There is a cattle car. I see that cattle car. That's how my father, mother, grandparents were taken from Frankfurt to Auschwitz. There's no question, from Lodz, from Litzmannstadt, from the ghetto. Very upsetting to see that car that was made for animals. And but we have to see it. People are going to be very upset when they go the first time. The second time they have to go, there are things in this Auschwitz exhibit that I did not know, of the rise of neo-Nazism, of how it was possible in a country that has Beethoven, Schiller, that has Mozart, that has all of these wonderful, wonderful intellectuals. How could that be that in a country like that,
Almost 80
anti-Semitism?
years ago, and we're seeing a repeat of that now. Why do you believe there's such a rise, 90% increase in incidents against Jews just here in New York City recently?
If I would have an answer, I would get a Nobel Prize. I don't have an answer. You have to get those people like Abe Foxman, who used to be the head of the Anti-Defamation League. I don't have an answer. What I do want to add to what you're saying, not to forget that in the rise of Nazism, in that exhibit, it is made so clear, it was not just against Jews. It was mainly against Jews. It was also against black people. It was also against homosexuals.
Gypsies.
Against gypsies, and not only that, against people with disability that were not considered in the image of the Aryan Nazis. That's what we have to right now. We have no choice. Every television program like yours, everybody has to be concerned.
Now, you have a documentary that is airing on Hulu.
Yes.
Anyway, it's a documentary, Ask Dr. Ruth,
Yes.
and it chronicles your life, an incredible life. And happy birthday, because you just recently turned 91 young.
Right.
Oh, my goodness.
And I know you for many, many years, 30-some years.
You've been a dear friend. Thank you.
Yes.
I want to show a clip from there, because
Yes.
there's a clip. This segment is of you at Yad Vashem, which is the memorial to the Holocaust victims in Israel. Take a look at this.
Jerusalem. The Nazis kept detailed records. And for many years, I really didn't want to see in black and white what happened to my parents. But as difficult as it is for me, I have an obligation to learn about the fate of my family.
As I grew up, I realized I didn't have grandparents on my mother's side. So I would ask about that, and she would answer the questions. But my mother didn't offer information.
It had to be a very moving thing for you to go through Yad Vashem.
Very upsetting. I knew that ahead of time. I knew when I said yes to the documentary that this has to be part of it, and that I have to teach the lesson of standing up to be counted and to fight anything that has to do with anti-Semitism.
I want to take a break. When we come back, we'll be joined by both Tova and Ruth. So stay with us as Pix 11 News Close Up continues. I'm back now with Dr. Ruth Westheimer, a Holocaust orphan, and I'm also pleased to be joined by two Holocaust survivors who you saw in my earlier report. Tova Friedman, she escaped the death camp at Auschwitz. Her mother and father didn't as well, but 150 members from her family did not. Ruth Mermelstein lost 6 of her siblings, along with her mother and father at Auschwitz. Thank you so much for joining us. I know this is all very painful to relive the past, but when you see those images, Tova, let me begin with you. I remember you telling a story about when you arrived at Auschwitz in that cattle car.
When I arrived in Auschwitz after 2.5 days in a cattle car, most of the people in the cattle car died from fright, from disease. And the first thing I saw were the dogs. I saw these gigantic German shepherds. I was exactly 5.5 years old. And the first thing I said to my mother, who was holding my hand, they're going to kill me. And she said, no, they won't. And within 5 minutes, she told me to undress. And when I said, why are we undressing right by the train when we arrived? She said, because those of us who aren't in perfect condition will go right there. And she pointed to the crematorium, where I, at 5.5, could smell the burning of people. And sorry.
It is understandable that this is difficult to talk
I was the
about.
only child on the transport. And out of 5,000 children, 5 survived from my town.
And you survived too because, was it your mother?
Yes, my mother helped me constantly. She was with me. She gave me her piece of bread. When we stood in appel being counted, she was there for me.
But you were also involved in a death march. Was that you?
No.
Or was that?
No, I never went to the death march because she hid me with a dead body, so that I don't have to go on the death march, because she.
But that was Ruth.
I went to the death march.
And your mother saved you, as I had noted. That
My mother, no. Well, actually, we came from they took us separately. Our house fell into a ghetto, but they took us away separately to the brick factory. Okay, and they had 3 transports from there going to Auschwitz. We were in the second transport. And when we came, they had no bathrooms, nothing. So it took us 3 days to get there. But the second day, they let us get off the trains to take care of our personal needs. And I saw a fence, and behind the fence there were a beautiful garden, and children were playing. I had a 4-month-old baby sister, and I really took care of her. And I was thinking that maybe will she ever be able to play like this, like the other kids? And that's how I wrote a book, Beyond the Track, in memory of her. Okay, we finally before we got to Auschwitz, we saw those big chimneys, you know, with the fire coming out, and my mother felt very uneasy about that, and my sister made up some kind of a story that she learned in school about burning wood or whatever. When we got out of the train, I was holding the baby, and then one of the refugees, you know, with the striped uniforms, they said every child should, the mother should take care of, hold every child. So I had to give over the baby, you know, to my mother. And when we were selected by Mengele to the right, my sister and my cousin, and I realized I had my little suitcase, you know, with the baby's clothes. So I ran out of the line, and Mengele held me by the shoulder, and I told him I'm going to take this over to my mother.
Mengele did that?
Mengele, right. And I was shocked, you know, I never heard. I thought that maybe he'll kill me, you know, getting out of the line. And I went to see my mother. She had 5 children with her. And he said to my mother, she was all of 40 years old, but she looked like 30. And he said that, there you look so young, and there I will select again. And then I was so choked up, I couldn't even say goodbye to my mother, tell her how much I love her or whatever, neither did she. And then that's the last time I really saw them. And then we arrived, really, it was middle of the night, like it was very dark, you know, but they had the lights on that it looked like night, you know, like daytime, right? And we went to, we didn't want to go, and we were the first transit faster, okay. Anyhow, to make it short, the only time I saw my father yet with the striped clothes, because we were carrying on, we didn't want to go and whatever.
I have to ask you, so it's difficult as you tell these stories, but the 3 of you bore witness to what happened.
Yes.
The Holocaust happened. And how do you respond to those deniers who say the Holocaust never happened?
I think that the best thing to do is to completely ignore them.
I agree, absolutely.
Absolutely don't answer, don't talk to them, don't have a conversation, as if they don't exist.
I agree with that, but they
right?
too,
we don't have to.
Absolutely, and you too should be commended for sitting here talking to Marvin, so that everybody should hear that message, that we cannot respond to them. We just have to ignore and
Absolutely.
show
I am so glad you say that, because some people like to have a conversation with them and explain to them, you don't speak to mad people. You just ignore it.
And what you did and what you are doing is to document all of your experiences.
I am a witness. One of the things that Hitler wanted to do, of course, is to kill all the elderly, and it was a war against the children. Why against the children? There are no children in Auschwitz. There were just a few of us left. Why? Because we will grow up. And if we escape, and we will be here, and we will be telling the story. And I speak constantly, I speak for the children, for the 1.5 million children who were gassed, who were starved to death. And I'm there to talk about it. And there are nobody left anymore. From my town, there are no children left.
Why do you feel this is happening today? Why is there such a rise in anti-Semitism, hate crimes against
That's an
Jews?
It's only
extraordinary.
happened because we are Jews,
Yes.
okay? And I remember we took along all the kids, to Auschwitz, and there was a guy near the bunk beds, and he said that 8 people were sleeping there. I said, that's not true. We were sleeping 13 of us on a bunk bed.
Ruth.
And then 2 young couples came over, and they said they're from Poland, okay? And the parents must have been real anti-Semitic. And they came from the States to find out why did this happen to you? I said, just because we are Jews. And then she said, but maybe you did something wrong. I said, listen, I had a 4-month-old baby sister. What did she do? And she started crying, and then we saw her walking around. She was still crying. She came to convince herself that we did something wrong.
But why today? I have to take a
Why
break.
today?
Why today?
I'm thinking
Tova.
about it. I think about it a lot, and that's why I talk about it, because I hope out of the 10,000 children that I speak to, somebody will become a politician and try to stop this. Why now? I think that they feel, how can people like us, who have been really out of ashes, who've lost everything, our families, our money, our clothing, build such a fabulous country, a country that is a power. And they're wondering, we must do something wrong. How can we just do a thing like that? I want to tell you, I'm very proud to be Jewish. I think out of everything that we've gone through, we have done a lot, and we've contributed a lot to the world.
And not only that, in my particular case, we have built a country, Israel,
Yes.
so that this can never happen again.
Exactly, exactly.
That we would have to say there's
Exactly.
no place on earth to
Right.
accept us. So you really should be getting a gold star here, and you
Well,
too.
you know what my gold star
some-
is?
Right.
My number.
I know.
I can show it because I'm here.
Right.
And he's gone.
Right.
Hitler, right? This is my gold
That's
star.
what I say when I show the picture of my 4 grandchildren.
Yes.
I say Hitler and the Nazis
Right.
are all dead,
We're here.
but we are here and we can have an exhibit.
And we are witnesses.
Right.
We
And I
are
have
the
to say,
Matter of fact,
witnesses.
I
Matt-
salute your courage to be able to.
Matter of
We
fact,
are the
a lot
witnesses.
of people take their numbers out, But I have my number
Me
because
too,
I said
me too.
If whoever is going to deny it, this is going to show them that it
Yes,
happened.
I
okay?
remember
And I speak to schools. I go to California. I speak to schools and I speak to
Right.
public schools.
And that's important.
yeshivas.
I want to bring
Very
on,
important.
I have to take a break. I'm bringing on someone who is doing just that. He is an advocate to talk against
Good.
all this hatred. And this is, I want to show this. This is Tova's liberation document from Auschwitz.
My mother's name and her number, and that she's coming with a child. And this was given by the Red Cross that came to Auschwitz after liberation.
so that you could travel to
Right,
Poland.
right. So we
We'll
can
take a
travel
break.
to Poland. Exactly.
We'll
so we can
continue.
travel home.
Right.
And you know
You're
what
home.
home was? Nothing. Nobody came back. And you know what?
Back now with Holocaust survivors Dr. Ruth Westheimer, Tova Friedman, and Ruth Mermelstein. And we're joined by a man who is dedicated to reversing the tide of hate, and he is trying awfully hard to achieve that. Meet Bill Tinglin. He's a longtime Holocaust advocate, education advocate. He's behind an initiative called A Tour for Tolerance. The idea is to transform a bus into a high-tech classroom and bring lessons of fighting hate. Good to have you with us, Bill.
Good to see you.
Tell us about this program. What are you doing? You've been out there trying to reverse that tide. And
Indeed. There are less than 40,000 Holocaust survivors remaining in New York. And it is our mission now to get Holocaust survivors and their liberators to see 400,000 high school kids and 379,000 middle school kids here in New York. How do we plan to do that? Our bus. We're converting buses into high-tech classrooms for the teaching of tolerance, empathy, compassion, and inclusion. And it's just a matter of time that we'll be able to have the first bus to see 50,000 students per year. When
You want a
we
fleet
hope-
of these buses?
Absolutely.
I think we have a video which very graphically shows once the students are on the bus, this is what it would be like.
And as the scene moves, they are seeing something shocking from history. We will be looking at the Holocaust, the internment of the Japanese, the Civil Rights Movement, Rwanda, Somalia, different moments in history where intolerance led to atrocities. In the second part, students will virtually interview the witnesses and the subjects of atrocities to talk about how they felt, what they were afraid of, how they found the courage to resist and to survive.
Very important lessons to be learned. But this is something now, it's an initiative going forward. But for 15 years, you've been out there talking to kids, going to
Yes.
schools.
Yes.
You have to get into the colleges where there's such a rise in anti-Semitism. What is the reaction to people when you talk about anti-Semitism and tell them how wrong it is?
It's unfortunate that they not aware of certain things in regards, particular to the Holocaust. We believed that if they had full knowledge of what took place in the past, man inhumanity to man, particularly the Holocaust, then they would not have had such behavior of hate. Charlottesville took place a few days ago, one may say. I believe, Marvin, if we had had our bus in place to be able to show them the importance of love, kindness, empathy, compassion, tolerance, we would not have a Charlottesville. So we're about to do what we're about to do, and we do have the bus. We were able to get it last week, a matter of fact. So it's a great thing.
That is really commendable in what you're doing now. If you had someone like Bill back
Yes.
in the 30s,
Right.
That's right.
might he have made a difference?
Probably.
Definitely would.
First of all, he combines education. I always speak in schools that education without morality isn't worth anything, because the people who did all of this were very educated. They were brilliant. They were PhDs. They were scientists and scholars.
And
They had no
doctors and
morality. So morality with education is what's possible. That's number one. Number two is we're always scared of the other. We should get to know each other a little bit.
How do you think, how do you feel, Ruth, that we should deal with this today? How should we approach to try and reverse this tide as Bill is doing?
Well, I feel very, I know that I went through so much, and I always say, I talk to the God. I said, please look down on us and show some how do you say nisim and
Miracles.
miracles, right? Show some miracles, because this is what what we need, and I just believe that maybe one day he'll show some miracles, and that's it. But I do speak to schools, and I tell them, and I only hope that during being that, like some people say, they never saw a Holocaust survivor, and when so that's what it is. I only hope it.
And
Dr. Ruth?
And what is wonderful about all of their work is that you are standing up to be counted, and
Right.
what they can show is that number that nobody can dispute of what has happened. And what you are doing is to show that this is not only an issue for Jews.
Right.
This is an issue for anybody who is different from other people.
And
Very important.
Another. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, so Marvin.
Final word.
Wonderful. You have to have 10 more programs like that with these people, and I will watch. Okay.
One of the things is that when I speak, I try to have them understand that they have to be aware when the prejudice starts, and it can even start with bullying.
Thank you. We have so much, we could spend so much more time talking about this. I appreciate your sharing your stories with us, and congratulations to
Thank you.
and continue your good work.
Indeed.
Tova Friedman and Ruth Mermelstein and Dr. Ruth Westheimer,
Thank
Bill
you.
Tinglin, thank you so much for joining us
Yes,
today.
Thank you for the
having
program.
us.
Very important issue to talk about. And I want to give you a reminder, the exhibit Auschwitz, not long ago, not far away, can be seen at the Museum of Jewish Heritage, a living memorial to the Holocaust located at the Battery. Final thought, we've learned that prejudice is not inborn. As the lyrics of the song in South Pacific proclaim, you
That's
have
right.
to be taught to hate and fear.
hate.
You have to be taught from year to year. Now, just as one can be taught to hate it should be just as easy to teach tolerance in love. That'll do it for our program for this week. If you have any comments or wish to see this broadcast again, log on to our website at pix11.com/newscloseup. I'm Marvin Scott. Thanks so much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, everyone.